Okay, good evening. My name is Scott McCutcheon of Sovereign Studios. Welcome to episode 16 of the Yamaha Virago Cafe Racer project. This is going to be kind of a fun episode. I've been postponing this particular one for a little while because I knew it was going to be an issue, but I didn't really have a reason to do it until I needed to pull the bike off this engine stand, right? So what we're going to be looking at today is parking stability. Specifically, the first time a YouTube user, Ethan, somebody, posted a comment on one of my videos about when he lowered his Virago and he swapped out his suspension for it, and it dropped the kickstand, or it dropped the bike itself, a few inches, basically making it to where his factory kickstand was no longer efficient. So that's definitely the problem here with mine as well, where the factory kickstand is basically too tall now that I've put the the R6 forks on it. So the OEM kickstand basically needs to lose like 2 inches of space right there in the middle. So we're going to basically be cutting that off and welding it back in place so that it is shorter. Additionally, I think we're going to do another fix that'll extend the actual lever piece a little bit out, because now it's covered by the linkage, makes it hard for me to grab with my foot. So we're going to be doing that as well in this episode. And then also we're going to fix this piece right here, this bump stop, which right now does not make contact, as you can probably see when you're turning the wheel here. So I need to make sure that it can make contact there. So we're going to be welding in a little tab here to make sure that it hits these bump stops. And that should do it for this video. Once that's all said and done, the idea being that we'll be able to actually take the bike off the engine stand and it can park on level ground of its own accord, like any other good bike. So that should be good. Let's get started. Alright, so I figure we'll take care of this tab stop bump thing first, since it should be easier to do than the kickstand. But to start out with, we're just going to pop the headlamp off to make it easy on us. Get it out of the way. Mostly because I'm going to end up doing a lot of this directly on the bike. And while maybe it's, it would be better to have done this while the forks weren't installed. Obviously welding on top of the frame and whatnot isn't ideal. But, we do what we gotta do. Alright. Make sure we keep all the little washers and tabs here. Okay, so let's kind of push some of this wiring out of the way so that we don't have to worry about getting hit with any of that welding spatter. That'd be no fun. Alright, so now that we kind of cleaned this up a little bit, basically what we'll do is we'll mask that up. So the real trick is, we've got these 1/4-inch steel plates, and I think something like this is going to work out pretty well for that tab. Right, so the trick is basically we'll cut out a little piece that is, brings it out there, and we'll just weld it in place. So something kind of like that. We'll just try and cut out a square. Tab. So, in theory, This piece will now just kind of weld right on there and hang out there, acting as the actual bump stop. Alright, let's do that. Okay, so you can see I've got this piece of 1/4 inch steel plate stuck out here. It's kind of pressing the tab in between the frames tab, right? The idea being that this gives it a nice snug fit before we go to weld, and gives me a nice clean place to put the ground clamp for the welder. Right, so hopefully you can see that well. I'm going to go ahead and get this masked up because I don't want to get welding spatter everywhere, so we'll get this masked up and get to it. Okay, and with that we're all set up and ready to go, and we'll really just get this tack right on this piece here, right, so that we end up with a moderately decent nub in that place. Okay, so it turns out we may have actually kind of lucked out here in that by adding enough material, we seem to have made enough of the bump stop to be able to succeed here. So what I'm going to do is just simply add a little bit extra material, and then we're going to grind this back down so that it's just a tab again. Then we should be done. Alright, and once we're all said and done, there's our new tab. So now we can properly pivot this guy and get bump stopped as we land on it, right? So still a little paint's still a little wet, I think, but it'll work for what it is. And now we'll get on to the kickstand. Alright, so for the kickstand, I'm pretty sure that this stand, the engine stand, is stable enough sorta. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, if we're careful with it, we could probably keep it up. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to pop this off and then chop out this section here and just re-weld it so that it's 2 inches shorter. To do that, I think we're just going to go ahead and pull this bolt and spring. So that we can drop this whole thing. Although, maybe it's easier. Oh yeah, we don't want to take the bracket out because I don't want to have to pull all this stuff. So we'll just pull the spring as well as this bolt here, and this whole thing should slide out. Right, so lift the chain up, let the spring dangle there. Now that this thing is loose, should be able to just go get a wrench and unscrew this guy. Right. So now we have this thing, which I'm pretty sure is iron or steel, one or the other. Don't really know. Probably steel. So the idea is going to be that we chop it off just before this foot, because we still want to be able to put the spring in. So we'll chop it off here, and chop it off here just before this factory weld, and then we'll just jam it back together, which is about as much as we can really do with the stock one. You know, maybe if we had like if we went with an adjustable lever, which, you know, maybe we'll do if this doesn't work out so well. But we're gonna give this a shot first. Okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and try this out. Worst comes to worst, we have to buy a new kickstand, but something tells me we'll be okay. Okay, now we are going to chop off this little section here. So now, in theory, we simply stick this back together like this, right? And end up with a shorter version of the OEM kickstand. So we'll grind these down so they fit a little better, and then go from there. Alright, let's see about welding these things. Okay, so really the only other concern that I have with this, hopefully it's gonna, you know, make it sit properly. You know, hopefully it'll make it sit properly. You know, it's not pretty, but it should work. Right, so we'll mount it back, and it'll just be a little shorter. Otherwise, keeping the bike up straight, just shorter. My only other concern with it is that once it's pushed up, you'll see that, you know, it goes further up, but it contacts, you know, it contacts the linkage there, preventing it from going all the way up, you know, like it used to be able to, which sucks. So part of me thinks that we basically need to bend this piece flat, which is probably not going to work. We're probably going to have to fucking cut it. Bend it flat and extend it by a couple inches so that we can actually get our toe on it, which I think we can do with the piece that we cut out here. Turn this into like some Frankenstein fucking kickstand bullshit. So we'll give that a shot just to make sure that we can use it. Okay, yeah, so the idea is going to be that we want to chop off this piece where it angles, and what we're going to do is we're going to take the extra 1.5 inches that we cut out from the other piece. We're going to weld this in place to extend it just a few inches, or, you know, 1.5 inches or so, and then we're going to weld the nub back onto it, so that way it will not only be straight but also extended a couple inches out, so that we'll actually be able to get our toe onto it. So let's go ahead and cut it up. And then we'll grind these down so they're flat before we weld them. So we got more of a solid edge coming out there. Alright, so here's our end result. It's not pretty, but it'll do the job. We're going to hit it with a coat of paint here in a second, but you'll see that now we can get it to come all the way up, even though it's still maybe not done as well as I had hoped. I'd kind of hoped to get this a little more straight than I did. I messed this up, obviously, but I think we can live with it if we move this to the inside, which is probably something we should do anyway. The reality is that you know, I sat on the bike the other day, and I think we're going to end up having to redo these linkages anyway to give them a little more angle down there. So we'll move this to the inside, give us a little more space there. So let's hit this with a quick coat of paint. That'll work. We'll leave it like that for the night and come back to it tomorrow. Okay, let's take a look at what we got here. Here's our finished kickstand piece. Not pretty, not really perfect for what I had in mind, but I think it'll do just fine. So let's go ahead and pop this guy back on here. You can see that I've already flipped the linkage here so that it's around on the back. You know, that way we now have a little bit of extra space there and it's not fully contacting. Easy stuff, right? Alright, and then we'll go ahead and get this this thing back on here. Like that. Okay, well, considering it's gonna slam into that linkage every time, that's a little disappointing, but we might have to redo that just to actually get it down further, because obviously we messed it up. Yeah, it sucks. I was hoping that it was going to be a little more straight, and I guess I welded it on incorrectly. Angled this the wrong direction. That sucks. Right. This one, now with how it's angled down, will avoid the, help to avoid that linkage. Alright, so now with it in there, you'll see where it not only avoids the linkage, but gives me a little bit of extra space there. Let's go ahead and, or space there to reach with my toe. So let's go ahead and pop this bolt back in here. Get this spring back in place. And now we're not contacting that linkage. And we have a little bit of extra room to reach with the toe. So hopefully that'll work out pretty well. Let's I guess try pulling it off the stand and see if it works. So now we see the bike is able to stand on its own, upright. It's maybe not as far over as maybe it should be. You know, I mean, definitely not as leaned over as these two guys are. But I think that'll do for now. You know, the day may come when we decide to, you know, make a new kickstand or readjust it or something like that. But I think for now that's good to go. I mean, I'd call that pretty stable. That's pretty stable. Very good. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Yamaha Virago Cafe Racer project. If you did, be sure to hit that like or subscribe button. Maybe check out my game Ethereal Legends on Steam. It'd be great if you guys could play that one. Tell me what you think. Hopefully, here in the next episode, well, I'm not really sure exactly how quickly we're going to get to that one because I got a lot of things coming up in my professional life, I guess, outside of the garage that I'm having to do over the next couple weeks. So that'll be interesting. I'm starting a new job and might be moving here real soon, so I'll end up with a new garage and that kind of stuff. But all that's pretty exciting, but it's going to keep me out of the shop for a little while. So hopefully we'll be able to do a little bit more soon. But for now, I think we're in pretty good shape. One of the reasons I really wanted to get this done was because if I do have to move the bike, I wanted to be able to roll it around since I can't exactly start it and move it under its own power just yet. You know, I might need to have to load it on a trailer to get it to my new garage. So we'll see how that's going to work out over the next coming weeks. But not something you guys need to worry about. But yeah, I feel pretty good about that. At least we know that, you know, fixing up the kickstand is a thing that will need to be done if you're following along with your own build at home. Same deal for the bump stop. You'll probably need to do a little work there to get it to work. All in all, I'm pretty happy with that. In the next episode, I guess we will look at probably ignition stuff. I want to go ahead and get the ignition pieces put in, so get those ignition coils reinstalled and get the control module itself installed right here. I want to get that stuff done, so with any luck we'll do that very soon. Alright, thanks for watching, and we'll catch up with you next time.